All right, good afternoon. Can everybody hear me? All right. I will call September 29th, 2022, a special meeting of the Design Review Committee to order at 3 o'clock. And for the record, I can see that the entire committee is here, including both appointed members and ex officio planning official, as well as staff, Hanna, Veal, and Betty Gum. There is one, well, are there any changes to the agenda by the committee members? The subdivision fiscal year 2022 number 5 has requested to be continued to a date certain of October 17th, 2022. And that could be included within a consent agenda.
I'll move to move
Thank you.
that be moved to the consent agenda. And then we'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. And then that will bring us to the pre-app discussions for today. And the first pre-application discussion is for design review, final number DFR fiscal year 2022, number 23. And we have Dory Delgado with us to discuss her proposal at 306 East 46th Street.
Share the screen. Hi, everyone. My name is Dory Delgado. I'm here to discuss Silver Bucket located at 306 East 46th Street. This is just a conversation. I know that it came up last time and we didn't quite get to it. We do back up to a 46th Street subdivision that's currently going through the design review process as well. And a couple of things I just wanted to note before we start any discussions is that we have worked together with that team and we have mixed our landscape plans and common open areas in the back. And we have added our walkway to combine those two properties. And there wasn't a ton noted in the staff report that was presented to us because our plans at the time were very preliminary. So I'm kind of just here for questions at this time. Just wanted to let you guys know that we did add that walkway and the connection between the two subdivisions.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
In regards to the street frontage connection between the buildings that are furthest to the street, what is the reasoning that those two units can't be pushed to the street, basically mirrored with bring the parking interior next to the hammerhead turnaround and move those two units so that they have direct connectivity to the street?
These two duplex buildings, are those the ones you're referring?
Correct.
We just didn't know if it would be all right with the city to have that parking lot kind of mixed in with that hammerhead. So, because it would end up looking more like a parking lot back there, but that is something we can do. We did do that on the last project that I discussed with you guys. We did shift those forward and move the parking spaces before, so, and behind it. So we can do that if that helps with the look of the subdivision.
I think to have a stronger connection and presence on the street side with garden beds and parking in between those two units, I think it would be preferable to have those adjacent to the street moved forward.
Okay, we can flip flop those parking spaces in duplexes.
Yeah, and then take a look too at the building itself and what is going to be more attractive on the street, because I think that that kind of pop out that's closer to the street now may just be stair tower. I'm not sure I don't remember exactly from the plans, but just look at that elevation and what's facing the street and have that be your cover photo kind of thing.
There might be, yeah, it might be an opportunity there, almost if you mirrored that unit so that that stair tower element is on the inside and gives you more opportunity to do something that is more engaging with the street as you move that building forward.
And just out of curiosity, is there a reason why the hammerhead, because at the very end, before we hit the last building, can that drive access share hammerhead access, or does that make the hammerhead too far from the street for some reason?
Yeah, it makes it too far.
Okay.
And there's the Davis Canal. Is
Oh, right.
Yep.
That's kind of performing that function as well.
Yep, and so we centered that drive over it.
That makes sense. Yep, I get it.
And this is what we have been discussing with the subdivision behind us. So we have added the walkway that goes all the way down our property, and it will come out at 46th Street and go all the way to the back of our property and connect to their walkway. And then our landscape architects are the same. So they are working on combining this landscape area in the middle.
So the back of your unit does not have private backyards. It's kind of just opens up into common space.
We do have some smaller partition walls that are going to be put in between each of the units. We didn't really want to fence the whole units off, but it really depends how those backyards and that common open space play out. But we do intend on putting some partition walls in between each unit, but not fencing the whole thing.
Kind of just a perpendicular wall coming out.
Yes, and the subdivision behind us is doing the same thing for their backyard. So we kind of matched what they were doing in between their units.
Yeah, and that'll be a math thing later for what is counting common and what is counting private. So
yes. And we can map that out before we formally submit on what is actually the private open space compared to what is the landscape common area.
Yep. And then did you address the center of that rearmost building as far as what we're looking at? What's that terminal view?
So currently it is still a garage like this. We can work on the look of this building, but it is hard because it's actually the threeplex, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, it is actually this threeplex. So it would be a garage, and I'm not really sure how we can change the view of that because we don't have a landscape buffer or anything. It's just straight road all the way down to access those units in the back.
And I guess kind of to that point, since there'll be the grouping in the sidewalk system and the rear of those, if there's any treatment that could be done for the view of the other subdivision coming in on it.
So I haven't actually seen their full elevations or renderings of the fronts of their buildings or the backs. That's something we could look at before formally submitting and see if we could do something there. But I haven't seen those from that team yet.
And then just out of curiosity, kind of flipping through the staff report, have you thought through maybe the amenities that would be provided as this is a multifamily?
Yes, so we did add that pathway amenity. We added that down the side of our property, which will start at 46th Street and go all the way down the side of our property and along the back to match the property behind us. And then we also have garden areas and artwork. And I believe with our unit count, we only needed amenities from 2 categories. Is that correct?
Thank you.
Yes.
And is that, I just flipped through one of those plans and it's saying 80 square foot private garden for unit E, 80 square foot. So that's counting as the private open space for one of those units. So then in addition to that, you have community garden somewhere.
That's correct. I need to work on the open space exhibit still before we formally submit, but that is the intention.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just talking it through. And as far as that terminal view, I mean, that is something that's
Because it would be this elevation.
yeah, it's something that is talked about in code is what is that and what makes it special and what makes it not what you're showing, I guess is the, one way to look at it. Because we do not want to have this, driveway promenade ending in a garage door and kind of blank building face. So that needs to be addressed some way.
Okay.
And, to go to the furthest extreme and then bring it back, the furthest extreme is it's not there. It's just landscaping, right? So then figure out what that means, something lesser than the furthest extreme.
And just to throw out what others have done. Utilizing, we've seen landscape be utilized, artwork be utilized, and architectural features be utilized. I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, that's gonna be important.
And then I'm trying to flip through because landscape plan isn't fully developed, but we talked about what if I'm a pedestrian on 46th and I'm going to unit A, either of the unit A's. I'm coming down the outside of the property line. Is that right?
That's
I'm not-
correct.
And that's on both sides.
Currently, it's on one side. We will need to work on that internal pathway that is always brought up. So we have to work through that a little bit. But we did add the one pathway down the side, just trying to figure out how to add another one in somehow for the other units on the other side.
Okay. And so where's the,
Yeah, it looks like there's stairs on
yeah,
the external of both five plexes there. So do you access those down the property line?
So this door actually goes into the garage if you wanted to come in, and then you can access the house in the inside of the garage. And then this comes down to their backyards from their living area, which is the living room, kitchen, that type of area. And then
so
these,
where's the, oh, sorry, go ahead.
these would be the front doors up by the garages.
Okay. So the front door is the garage, is the driveway.
That's correct.
So then we need to somehow delineate the pathway from the sidewalk all the way up along these doors through the driveway, basically. Because we don't want FedEx, UPS, trick-or-treaters just walking up the middle of the driveway. We want them to kind of know where they're going.
Yeah, and we were trying to lay out a pathway in there, but it also looks like we're going to need to do something with that end building as well. So we'll look into that some more when we figure out what exactly we're going to do with that end building.
Okay. Because you have, it looks like in rendering and plan, you have kind of a boxed in maybe landscape well with the two squares in it. Those little white squares on the renderings. Is that kind of like a landscape area
Yes.
between the garage doors? Okay.
Yes. Yep.
So yeah, figure out how the path interacts with that.
Okay.
If that's your front door, if that's the address
Yes, it would
side,
be.
which, yeah, going into the unit, floor plan wise, it looks like that wants to be.
And then I might need to recant my previous comment, how it's interacting with the back. I'm not. If you look at that again, it looks like that you might have it pretty concealed with the landscaping too, which would become from your neighbors, if their vista would be the landscaping. If that's the case, then I recant that previous comment.
Yeah, in some of these renderings that were shown, we're actually working on those now that we've added that pathway and are trying to match some of what the neighbors are doing. So those backyards and those renderings will change as we continue to develop that plan.
Thank you. The staff report did talk about a little bit about the architectural components. Are there any comments on that?
I guess I would wonder and ask what breaks up the long continuous ridge line.
I think
see-
there is a little bit of undulation
There's some
On some of those.
different gables.
elements that I think helps with that. I guess again, that one, the terminus view, it's just a simple ridge line over there, kind of, that just needs some thought on what that is, if this is the arrangement to have a building at the end of that drive. But I don't know, I think there's enough going on, different material changes and elements pushing and pulling, and that I'm okay with what they've presented here.
Yeah, it feels, if I look at the renderings, the driveway side seems like there's a lot of solid void, and that comes through in the roof lines. But do we lose some of that on the backside, or is it just I'm not seeing a view that's at the same angle? There's kind of a straight on flat view rendering of the backside where we see the stairs.
Yeah, those may have been, that's, I think what you guys are looking at and what the staff report was based on was previous renderings. And these renderings that I have are currently being updated, and we're working through what that back view will actually look like now that we're updating it with that walkway, because we're going to have to do something back there a little bit different.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
It just seems like the backside lost some roof undulation, but it may just be because we're looking at an ortho kind of straight on rendering in our packet. And then with the pathway, with the front doors being just a front door and the rest of the elevations being garage doors along there. One thing we've asked for in the past on projects like this, where basically the driveway becomes the public view, is to get some glass in the garage doors, just to create a sense of, kind of, hey, what's going on inside, what's going on outside. It's not just this kind of dark alley with no eyes on the street, in essence.
Yes, we can definitely update the garage doors.
I don't have any other comments unless there's specific questions.
Staff, if we missed any of the points that
think so.
are more.
I didn't, and it's because I was busy, but I didn't hear the specific architectural comments regarding those front 2 units. I heard that we needed to move them forward, essentially flip-flopping the parking with those units, and then that's all I heard, so.
I think, yeah, I think just in conjunction with moving them forward, just, you know, review how they engage with the street, with the fenestrations and the articulation of that front street side facade. Because I think right now what's happening is it's the kind of the design of those units is reacting to this parking element that's there. And once that kind of gets moved around, you know, it's gonna, there's gonna be some opportunities there to look at what those units are doing and how they interface with the street.
And then I guess this is more a question for the applicant. Since you have so much irrigation opportunity, are you going to utilize that as part of a common open space or like a subdivision sign, or I guess multifamily sign, or are we just going to plan on keeping it open on the, I'll call it the northern property boundary?
We plan to pipe all of it. Yes. Just for the sake of the pathway and the connection between 46th and 47th. I just feel like it will be a little more safe and convenient for people that are walking down that.
And I do think that Hannah was still up moving around when you had the slide up showing the connections. So that might, if you wouldn't mind showing.
So we
that
have
again.
this one, right? I think this is the one you're referring to, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah, so our walkway, if we pipe that all the way down the side, we're able to put that walkway in all the way down to connect to the subdivision behind us. And then connect to their walkway that also appears down the middle of theirs and off to the side. And then share landscape area and common open space in the interior of it.
Just a thought, because code does speak to not piping irrigation facilities. Could we flip the walkway, or at least put up some kind of fencing along the irrigation canal in order to preserve that canal being open?
Even if we were to leave it open on that side, it's still in those people's backyards. And the way that it lays out is it's partially on our property and then it kind of weaves around. It's not a straight direct line, so it's just easier and better for our design and people's backyards. So that not some people have a portion of it and some people don't. So our thought was just to pipe it all the way so that everybody has the same backyards or similar areas back there.
Thank you.
And then the Davis Canal, obviously, we have to pipe that one.
Right, any questions that you want feedback on?
I think I have enough information.
Great, well, we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next up is design review fiscal year 2022, number 26. Ashley Buzzini with ED Studios, hoping to discuss an 8-foot tall fence located at the West Bet site. And I do apologize if I did not say your name correctly.
Nope, you got it right. I was correct. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear
Yeah.
you, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, so we are proposing a 8-foot tall fence to help block view for the new oxygen bulk tank that they are going to be installing. And the fence is going to be metal and then painted, well, powder coated to match the building's aesthetics as well.
And how tall is the equipment in there?
The bulk tank itself is taller than the 8 feet. Let me grab the exact number really quick. I believe the bulk tank itself is 10 feet. I want to verify on Norco's drawings as well, just to make sure I'm giving you guys the correct information.
And then question for staff is there something that mentions equipment must be screened or anything like that where
There is a provision that requires that equipment is screened.
Yeah, probably be found in 8.4A. It's usually where. It's big, like trash enclosures and HVAC systems and equipment and essentially being screened.
It's just a question, is there a, just in looking where that tank is going, is there any reason that it couldn't maybe be shifted so it wasn't right in the middle of the parking, so it could almost be screened by something that looked more integrated into the building facade or something like that? Just it seems a little odd there to have that sitting in the middle of the parking area with just a fence around it. I don't know. I guess my question is there a reason that it's siting in specific location is directly adjacent for piping, or I mean, is there something going on there that?
Yeah. So the tank itself is going to be 16 feet tall, and yeah, it's large. But so the reason, there's a couple of reasons we decided to locate it where it is. One of the biggest reasons is because the vet clinic's oxygen reserve is on the roof, on that side of the building, so it helps with piping. And they're little on our site plan. There's like a tiny room that has a keynote number 11. And that is also where their other oxygen, like their tanks, are held for the hospital. So we were trying to keep it all on the same side of the building, the main source of it. And this side of the building is, so where the tank is located is kind of just like a drive that can bring employees or other traffic to the back side of the building. So we didn't want to put the tank on the back side of the vet building because there's another building over there. So we didn't want it to be in the middle of their parking lot, their drive aisles, and things like that. So the reason this side was chosen was just because there wasn't a ton of parking there, and a lot of customers and pedestrians don't travel back there. It's mainly employees or people that have to come pick up the deceased animals is pretty much all the traffic that is back there.
And how tall is the building itself?
The building is 2 stories. I was not the original architect on that one. Let me see if I've got that. Shown. I believe the original building height is close around 30 feet. I don't know the exact, but it is 2 stories.
I think it'd be helpful to see all that in context of the building and the height of the tanks and the fencing
Yeah.
when you come in, you know, formally or what have you, but
Yeah, with some true elevations and maybe renderings of kind of what's going on with the parking and stuff. And can it be buried? Because that's a pretty substantial element as it sounds.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it cannot be buried just because it will need maintenance and things like that.
And then is there at the end of it looks like, back to my rendering or my view, but it looks like there's a sidewalk along the building. Does the north end of that sidewalk go to a door, or is that just a sidewalk for
It's
people
just
that
a
are parking
sidewalk
there?
just for people that are parking there.
Because that maybe begin, if it can tuck in that corner instead of, like Brett was saying, it's kind of out in the middle of the
Sure.
the
Yeah.
I
parking
think
area.
it'd be nice if you could kind of tuck it in that corner.
We do, for code, have to be 10 feet away from, 15 from the structure of the building for fire code. And then we have to be 10 feet from the edge of like a sidewalk or pedestrian path, which is why it kind of sits out there quite a ways. And then there's like a flat pad right in front of it for any like trucks and people to drive over if needed.
10 feet from the building, or 15.6. How far does that have to be from the building?
So
10
from the
feet.
building, it needs to be 15 feet. And then like the fence where the start of the enclosure happens, it needs to be 15 feet from the building. And then where that enclosure happens needs to be 10 feet from the edge of a sidewalk or pedestrian path.
And is there any asterisk that says unless you have this sort of fireproof wall or anything like that? Because I'm just talking through, and thinking through how to tuck against the building and have it be more of an architectural element than just a, you know, massive tower in the middle of the asphalt.
Yeah, and I understand that thought process as well. I think initially the thought behind it was to help alleviate some cost instead of having to build a firewall, a rated enclosure around this, that they could still have the functionality of what they need, but keep it away from the building without that fire rating.
Well, I would encourage you to maybe look at that, and whether it's a CMU enclosure or some kind of element that allows you to kind of get it a little bit more integrated in with the building facade, instead of just standing there by itself in the parking lot, in and around where pedestrians and parking is occurring.
So even if this is just employee area, not like customers or visitors, because like to the back, it's like employee parking and stuff, and then like customers and stuff is all up front. So really, visitors or pet owners should not be back there, but I do understand where you're
Yeah, I think
coming
you know, when I looked at this, reviewing it ahead of time, I was like, oh, you know, it's a thing behind the fence, and you know, it's kind of on this side, you know, side parking access. It's not hugely visible from Chinden or from the back. You know, you're kind of looking through a long parking lot past another building from the back street.
Yeah.
But it being a 16-foot tower in essence, which looks like almost as tall as the building itself, it kind of takes on a different presence. So I would, you know, I'd hope you could come back with a proposal that kind of talks about how it's integrated into the building or becoming a part of the building architecturally. Because I mean, you came in to ask for a 8-foot fence exception, but really that's not doing what it needs to do for code, which is screening equipment.
Okay.
So it's like, you know, does it matter if the fence is 6 feet or 4 feet or 8 feet if it's trying to screen 16 feet? So I think that's a bigger question to back up and ask. And you know, how can you integrate it into something that looks like it's more thought through?
I would agree with that. I mean, if all it's doing is providing security, which is at 8 foot or 6 foot, that's all it's doing in my mind. It's not really screening that element. So if it's just providing security, I still would like whatever fencing is there to be a little bit more integrated, so that this element's not just standing out there by itself with a fence around it.
Yeah. Okay. I do have a question that I don't know if it can be answered here or not, but since the tank is so large, and you know, can cause fire concern, I do worry a little bit about putting it closer to the building, even with fire rating enclosure around it, only just because it's so large. But I don't know if that is a concern that needs to be had, or what your guys' thoughts are on that.
As long as it's whatever the solution is it complies with all the codes and requirements, including fire code and the rest of that. I mean, I'm just looking at it from purely how it interacts and from where it is to the building. Obviously, from fire code reasons, if it needs to be, you know, 15, does it need to be more than that? Should it even be way out by itself? I mean, I couldn't speak to that. Just that I would encourage whatever comes back to really think about how it feels more integrated and not that it kind of feels like it's in the middle of the parking area, where whether it's employee parking or what have you, just, I mean, I would at the very least encourage you to slide it down so there's not stalls on both sides of it. Feels really
Okay.
kind of that doesn't feel like a good sighting to me, to have vehicles parking on both sides, even if you slid it down just enough to where vehicles are only on one side of it, and then think about how you do a more integrated fencing around it. Maybe that in my mind, maybe even if it's fencing that's just for security to keep people away from it, but that fencing looks more integrated. Maybe it's using some of the same building materials or what have you. And then this element sticks out the top of that a little bit, but it just feels more integrated.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know that the right answer is to build some 16-foot, 17-foot tall element to hide this thing. I mean,
Yeah.
we see these kind of more utilitarian components, propane filling stations, and just all kinds of different stuff like that support building functions. I just think it's so close to the building that, okay, why isn't it feeling more integrated? It's not sitting off
Okay.
in the parking lot by itself.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Would and I'm just throwing out maybe an idea here. If we were to build like a nicer looking enclosure that isn't like, I guess, a fence, it'd be more considered a wall, kind of like a trash enclosure
Yeah.
that matched the exterior finishes of the building. Could we keep it in the same location?
I guess I would just have to see what that looks like.
Okay.
Just, I'm just thinking that if you brought something off where that outer corner is there, and that came out and then went down and around and back to the building, but kind of had it more included in that corner element, kind of more sucked down there, and not have, again, parking on both sides of it. In my mind, it would feel more intentionally integrated into the building siding.
Okay. Okay.
And is the west side, so I'm just looking at the aerials, and the west side doesn't show this pop out. Is that a addition, a proposed addition, or something that just went in since the aerials?
That's just something that went in since the aerials. It's been there for a while
Okay.
now, I think.
So that took up some of the parking that I see in the aerials, and there is a inside corner there, basically, like you've drawn it.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So another little bit of a concern that I have is, so we did receive like building approval on this, but we didn't obviously receive planning approval. So they have, I actually haven't been to the site, but I know that they have started some construction portions of it, but they have not installed like fencing or anything like that. I know they have the pad there. Obviously, if we are required to move it over, that's how it has to be, but I just wanted to kind of bring that up as well to see.
Well, I would just put together your best solution.
Okay, we can do that, no problem.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And we look forward to meeting with you again, and we'll move on to the next discussion, which is design review fiscal year 2022, number 29. And it's Kayla Duclos with Eric Hagan Architecture requesting a TI, but it doesn't look like it's probably Kayla that we're going to hear from. I'll turn it over to you.
Kayla's right here. I'm Eric Hagan.
Hi.
I'm the architect. It's a tenant improvement. Essentially, it's an addition to an existing garage to turn it into a woodworking shop. There's an existing single-family residence on the property as well.
All right.
Do you want me to share my screen?
That would be
Sure
great.
can.
All right. And good day to all you committee members. This is our first time doing this, so with Garden City, so please appreciate your patience. Thank you. What screen am I sharing here? I think the wrong one.
You're sharing a Google Maps there of some sort.
All right. Well, that's the site and the location of the nearest transit stop. And so these are the plans that we sent. We are this property right here. And to the south of us, this is a future development, not yet built there, but it's a future development for a transmission shop. We've been in coordination with the owners of both properties to develop a shared access agreement between the two properties so that we can have a shared access drive and shared trash enclosure, trash facilities. That gives us more room on the property to provide parking, landscaping, and other improvements. Focusing in on the area of work, which is the back of the property. Our initial proposal was to leave the residence as is. This is the existing garage. And so what we're proposing, it's an existing 880 square feet garage. And what we're proposing to do is add on a workshop addition, which would include a stock room for the lumber and then a showroom with a slab hall. So essentially clients can come in from the front here. They have a showroom of products, and then they can go to the slab hall where they can select raw slab edges to have their products built from. So this whole area consists of basically the public showroom part of the project, and this wall was basically added to meet the requirement of the 3-to-1 ratio of workshop to the showroom area. So that was the landscape plan, and this is just our building plan. It's pretty much more of the same. Exterior elevation. So when you're at the shared access drive, looking at it from the south, existing garage, and then we're adding on this new single-story wood frame structure. Proposed finishes. Kayla, you want to go over that part?
Yeah, so if you go to the SD, there's some,
Oh, the SD.
yeah.
This package. Is it this set?
It's the SD. The 630.
Computers are running slow today. A little bit more colors, right?
Yeah. So we have these two angled roofs of the shop and the slab room coming together, and they will be more or less matching the color, maybe a new finish from the existing shop. And then this front public entry will be its own independent mass with a different roof line, and it will be more of a warm tone, maybe treated wood material that really stands out and welcomes the public into that open gallery space and leads them into the slab hall from the parking.
So these two views are from the shared access drive as you approach the building. And this would be the view from the rear of the property line, looking back towards the lower mass of the showroom, and then the upper, the taller mass that has the shop and the slab hall.
Yeah, and these clear story windows that allow light into all the spaces, into the gallery and into the gallery has its own glass doors and open windows, but making the shop space taller with clear story windows to allow lots of natural light when he's working.
And the materials we're proposing.
So I was thinking this would be a treated wood shiplap or board and batten, and then the shop would be what's that called?
Standing seam metal roof.
Yeah, the roof will be standing seam metal. And these are two different, they could be different materials or just different orientations of the same material.
So still a work in progress, and we're obviously open to suggestions. It's kind of an industrial area. It's going to be a commercial industrial feel, trying to use some natural materials, but also some metal to fall in line with the other buildings in the neighborhood.
Can you bring up the site plan again and just kind of talk about this is, orientation and flow from the street back here? Okay, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, let's pull up that map again real quick. So I always have to keep looking at this to kind of help. So this is an older photo. There was a garage that was added back here in 2018. No, they just got approval for it. They just got the C of O. And when the property changed hands, they had to get the C of O for the garage. And that garage was for the residents. This is the transmission lot to the south, which is currently still undeveloped. Obviously, you can see there's a cul-de-sac at the end of the road that's halfway developed. And one of the requirements from ACHD is as we go through and develop this right of way with the adjacent property owners to develop the cul-de-sac and then of course continue the attached sidewalk all the way around. So taking that, going back to the drawing.
So is that a private drive design
Yeah.
there?
So
Okay.
yeah, so from here on back would be a private drive. We got the hammerhead turnaround, meeting the fire department truck access requirements. And that's kind of what we're showing is different materials here. We don't know exactly what the adjacent property owner is going to use for their materials at this point, though our civil engineer is actually the same civil engineer that's working on our property. Is going to be doing their property, and he's also working on the shared access easement as well.
Okay, so is the thought that shared access drive, if you will, is it a drive or a private street? Are they going to be accessing their building off of that as well too?
Yes.
Is that the idea?
Yes.
And what of the what of the whole front of the lot? Does that, what happens there? Other than the attached sidewalk gets connected?
Yeah.
That-
An interesting question, Derek. So currently, the parking for the existing residents is right here. And let me show you the,
Seems like, isn't there a garage there or some kind of carport or something like that?
no, there's nothing. It's this area right here.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So it's kind of rather undeveloped and clearly not conforming with current standards. But that's basically where everybody's parking right now for that property. And you can see the adjacent property's got nothing going on. And of course, there's a trailer blocking our view of the rear of the property there. But so we had an initial review with Hanna Veal a couple months ago. And she mentioned to us that as we are upgrading and adding on to this structure here, the existing residence parking will need to be addressed. So the existing garage is currently the required parking for the existing residence. And so we would maintain that as the covered parking for the existing residence. And then we have a requirement from ACHD for a class 2 or class 3 tree along the public right of way, along the sidewalk, street frontage. So we'll have to do some also landscape improvements along this area, which at that point would basically remove that gravel parking lot there.
How will the existing residents interact with that garage back there, and the interaction between the two, the house and when they go pull in their garage and whatnot?
They would just have to access it like they would be currently and just walk from the house back here. We should have a connecting sidewalk going across here as they get back there.
And question for staff, because this reminds me of, I'm not sure what was that business on Osage where they kind of developed the back half of the lot, but that triggered perimeter landscaping throughout the lot. So regardless of where the project was, basically the whole site was impacted landscaping wise. Do we look at that the same way?
I think that one is a little bit different, the one you're talking about, Derek, because I believe it was on 2 separate parcels.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
not
and they came
mistaken,
through.
and they
came
actually,
through one.
yeah, they actually did improve along the other parcel for connectivity. The way I remember it, but it wasn't, I think that was maybe beyond what our requirement was. We wanted the connectivity, but it was a separate parcel. Here, it appears that it's all one parcel. And
Yes.
so then I'm kind of wondering, okay, well, how does code look at that being all one parcel when we're developing a good portion of the parcel, percentage of the parcel into this new, more commercial type use function, but then intermixing, oh, well, we've got residential parking that's back here as part of it. And I don't know, it seems a little, I'd just be curious to understand a little bit more about what code is specifically requiring as far as the rest of the parcel.
Right. And even bigger picture where it's sitting on the lot, because it's not interacting with the street and it doesn't have a public presence like.
No,
we've
and
been
that's
familiar
correct.
with.
And if it was, it seems like if it was a separate parcel back there and now we're facilitating pedestrian access and kind of street side engagement with that drive aisle and not really as much with the street, because now it's it has a relationship to that, but yeah. Being on the same parcel, really that street frontage is the frontage to the, where the existing residence is, and I would think that would have to have some improvement along there and really kind of strengthening that access all the way down to that component in the back. But I still think I'm a little not sure how it should be interpreted with kind of the again, the residence parking in the back, and then this new commercial component.
And then there's the interaction. So if we say, okay, street front is 38th or 39th, whatever it is, you know, and we need to draw the public down to this new commercial shop that's set deep in the lot, then we still want to have this interaction of like, here's the storefront, right? Not here's the parking, then the storefront. So do we need a stronger connection of that corner, the public corner? We need that to be the strongest connection, not having the parking in front of it. Right, because if this private drive was the public street, we wouldn't allow 5 parking spots in front of the building. Those would be behind the building, and we'd have the street front presence be pushed up to the street front.
That's an interesting take on it, Derek. And yeah, you're right. I think in that regard, we could definitely fit the parking over here on the side if we were to treat this as more of like a street frontage and put the parking off to the side. This is essentially a storage yard for his wood before he gets it into the shop. And so he will have an access drive coming in here into the back, well, I guess the first set of doors to drop off the lumber. And so that could easily be adjusted to accommodate parking along here.
Along the lines of the views, as you heard in the previous application, discussing the terminal view, and then along with that, maybe thinking through that trash enclosure as well.
Sorry, we could barely hear you.
I apologize. I'll speak into the microphone. I was noting along, looking at the views and the noting that the terminal view with the trash enclosure that's at the end of the properties.
At the end of the drive.
Yeah, that was an alternative in case what's the trash service?
Republic, yeah. In case
didn't want to drive all the way to the back of the lot.
That, I guess that's the one that Jenna's talking about, is that trash enclosure at the back of the lot. It becomes this terminal view that you're looking down, and it's welcome to this trash enclosure, and that's something that we don't want to see.
Yeah, it's a delicate ballet with what Republic will allow. They don't want to have to go in too far into the property. We want to be able to share the trash enclosure between the two properties.
And that location that you had as an option that's out there in the middle, okay, now it's a trash enclosure that's blocking the view to this new addition commercial element that's in the back. So that's really not ideal either.
No. And if we do end up putting it on one side of the other, then it ends up becoming that trash enclosure for that one property. And then ultimate transmission will have another trash enclosure over here. So we'll end up having, well, what we'd probably end up doing is, if we can't have it here, it doesn't fit within the shared access easement. So we'll probably end up having 2 trash enclosures, probably one over here and one over here, which we haven't discussed that one with a Republic yet.
Well, it's just it's not impossible to have one, it's just a longer walk for one property or the other, right? I mean, it could, if it's down in Ultimate Transmission's corner by the ditch, if it's, you know, as far, yeah, it's a long ways for Republic to drive, but
It's that, and currently right now, we're just, the shared access agreement that we're pursuing is just a simple, straight,
right.
26-foot
Yeah.
wide easement. So we'd have to extend that over to include the
Yep.
access to the trash. Is there another way to approach it that wouldn't kind of force this shared drive into a more of a access roadway? If we reoriented something so that it was all just straight off of 38th Street from the perspective of the design review.
If what was trash or the whole project?
Well, I mean, the two issues that you brought up, the parking and the trash, we're looking at this as if the shared access drive is an actual public right of way. But is there another way that we could approach this without treating this as a public right of way that would require moving the trash enclosure? The parking, I think, is an easy one to address. A shared trash enclosure is not as easy.
Well, back to parking, just to distract you from trash for a second. The sliding 5 parking spots over in front of the building would still kind of be, it presents parking more forward than building, right? So,
If we're
and
looking at it
that's,
from 38th Street, yeah.
Well, if we're looking at it from 38th Street, the pedestrian access is leading you straight to the front of the building. And this becomes more of an alley.
side, yeah, and that's a fun staff report for Hanna to work through, is kind of like, how are we treating this?
Yeah.
And in that case, the parking, if we're treating 38th Street, is it 8 or 6? Yeah, 38. If we're treating that as the street front, then where you've just rotated the parking, you know,
Then that
doesn't
would-
work.
Yeah.
And even if it stays where it was, we're still kind of presented with this. As we walk down the sidewalk and come to the building, we're looking at the building across parking, you know,
Right.
through the parking. So,
I guess another alternative would be just like how Ultimate Transmissions is proposing their parking over there. Could do the same.
well, that definitely makes the building more prominent, right?
Yeah.
Well, and then for that matter, the building can come closer to the private drive or closer
Yeah.
to the street, you know?
We were limited with 2,000 square feet of area of shop, so that we can't really expand the building any more than it already is.
Well, but you could slide the building forward.
The whole thing, yeah.
Yeah, you could do something like that.
Or make it more this way. rather than this
Yeah.
way.
There was an interesting part in her report that I was trying to wrap my head around, that was talking about the location of the building in relation to the front of the property. But if we're looking at this as the front.
Well, I think by doing that public drive, shared access component, you're creating kind of it's more than a driveway, so to speak. It's got pedestrian sidewalk access, and so now it starts to feel like this is more like a private street, if you will, versus a driveway access.
Right.
And so I think that if you look at it that way, that you've created it in that fashion, and you can have your building engage with the front of that street or that drive, private drive element, then I think being able to develop that far back in the property is something that you could do without feeling like you've got to, the only thing you can do on this property, being that it's so deep, is to somehow tear down the existing residence and put another building up next to the street. I mean, the way you've brought that in there, I think you've kind of made a case, if you will, that you are connecting with a access way that has a strong pedestrian pathway that gives it that connection to the main street of 38th, if you follow that.
Yeah, and I think that, moving it to this shared drive, you've already begun to accentuate and give that elevation some interest, right? And so to wrap that around the corner so that it's interesting from the whole approach, not just when you're looking at it facing north. I think that there's an opportunity there that it's an inviting building as we come up this sidewalk and when we get to the quote front of it, right?
Right.
And it might also give you a little bit better, say opportunities to look at how that new mass and those roof slopes interact with that existing gabled roof form, instead of clashing into it like it's doing now. Maybe there's some opportunity there if you start to move that new component and pull it forward or do something different with that, how those connections are made.
Right.
And is the ultimate footprint something you drew on, or is that something that's coming down the pike? Because I think a lot of the comments we're having here are applicable, like the parking shouldn't be in front of the building.
Right. We had been approaching the project from West 38th Street and just treating this as a drive aisle.
Yep.
Though I do agree with you, Brett, that by putting that in there, it does create it more as a private street than a parking lot drive aisle, especially having the property at the back. And the way we oriented the building and the massing really reinforces that case, in the sense that the front doors to the showroom are facing the drive aisle, the private street. Yeah, and moving.
Asking about ultimate transmission. We didn't draw that.
Oh, the ultimate transmission
Okay.
one?
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't draw that one.
Okay.
That's another architect. So they actually have, I'm not even sure where they are on that one, but they were putting their entrance here. Do we have that one that has the angled?
There's like.
I was kind of, oh, I see. Yeah. I was just kind of thinking through the impact of now this becoming a private street. So how does that orient? Are we forcing the neighbor into some sort of orientation as well?
Yeah.
When we do this?
As we've been working through this with the adjacent property owner's architect, they haven't changed their plan much at all, aside from adding this entry thing here. Their site doesn't quite seem to be completely worked out yet. And I get the impression they're actually still open to changing things. And as you can see, our proposed easement is right on the edge of their building as well too. So I would expect there to have to be some push and shove there. And since I have this open, I'll just go ahead and let the cat out of the bag on this one. So we did look at adding residential to the front, taking out the existing residence and adding a residential component back in with some higher density units. So that is another element that we're currently looking at as we move forward on this.
There's one detail that I think that I'd like to discuss with the committee. And looking at, I'll call it the southern property with the shared drive aisle, if it's looked at all together, then the sidewalk policy would be clear that there's attached sidewalk on both sides. But the adjacent property, as well as half of the turnaround, has attached sidewalk, and I can see that this project's proposing attached sidewalk. But the policy says that it needs to be attached on both sides.
So what you're saying is that forces by policy detached.
Depending how it's viewed. So if it's viewed with both properties, then I think it would be clear in the policy that the applicant could utilize the attached sidewalk. And I think there is an argument there, and that they're proposing shared access, et cetera. However, the policy also states that it's detached sidewalk is required unless it's attached on both sides. And so there is that existing attached sidewalk halfway through the roundabout, and then on the other side of this project.
Yeah, so this is the existing one across the street.
Yeah, so it looks like to complete that, it would be attached sidewalk would be, I think, appropriate. It's attached on both sides. It's attached there and it's attached on the other side of the cul-de-sac.
And I can't imagine ACHD smiling about the proposition of finishing their cul-de-sac, which they have in their plans, I read somewhere, and then it not connecting with a detached. So it makes sense to connect the dots in this case.
Thank you.
I would like to see that cul-de-sac be finished out as sidewalk though, rather than, you know, developer comes in and finishes that out and we don't have this, you know, because then that just, it psychologically becomes the sidewalk where it crosses the private street and gives the pedestrian somewhere to travel on, right? Even though it's a curb cut in essence.
Talking more like that.
Well, I was talking across, yeah, across the drive, yeah,
And,
and across, yeah. Finish the circle.
oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So if you were just wandering the cul-de-sac, you'd have a logical circle to finish.
Yeah. I was thinking about. Yeah, I mean, just like,
You just have a curb cut that goes into your, just like that.
yeah, like
Yeah.
this one and this one over here.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what we were expecting it to be too. ACHD's pretty much told us that each property owner is going to be responsible for completing that cul-de-sac out. So we'll have our portion, which is just the top end of the cul-de-sac, and then ultimate transmission will have the rest of it down here. And then obviously the shared access drive will have to be developed along with the first property to be developed, which looks like it's going to be ours if we continue forward.
All right.
Okay, did we give you enough things to think about?
Yeah, we have plenty of stuff to think about. Lots to move forward on, and we did get the staff report last night, and we've been going through it, and lots of things for us to check off on our list there. But it's been helpful. One last thing I just want to address since we're here is if anybody sees anything wrong with trying to add a higher density residential portion to the front of the property.
I
I'll
suspect,
tell. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I suspect that you might anticipate that perimeter landscaping at that point. And then whatever Derek was going to say.
Yeah,
I was gonna say something that we say time and time again is treat that front unit on 38th Street like it's on 38th Street. Don't just give us the side of a fourplex. Don't give us the side of an 8-plex or a 12-plex. Give us something that's really cool from 38th Street.
gotcha. And then we're looking at two options, a 4-unit, 2-story townhouse. These are kind of the extremes. Much smaller units, but 3-story duplexes, basically 4 buildings and all. And the one thing that's coming up as I'm looking at this is the driveway access into the units as well. I was thinking might be a concern. This would require access from the street, 4 of them. And then this is kind of showing a back parking lot like we were discussing earlier.
Yeah, I wouldn't get excited about all those curb cuts on 38th.
I figured as much. And obviously, if we did have 4 along here, there'd be 4 curb cuts along the private drive. But we'll see which way the client wants to go on this one, and I would suspect we'll probably be back here again next time.
With the shop part.
Yeah, with the shop part fixed per your comments, we'll address the trash and the parking. We'll get the landscaping figured out and go through the rest of the pre-application staff report items. And as we're looking at this with the client, the residential portion of that, we'll get that wrapped up. All right.
Okay.
Excellent.
Appreciate the time, you
Thank you.
guys.
Thank
You
you.
bet.
Thank you. And we will adjourn this meeting at 4:22 PM, but please don't leave because we have participants for the other